Now the Lord said to Samuel,
How long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons.
So it was, when they came, that he looked at Eliab and said,
Surely the Lord's anointed is before him.
But the Lord said to Samuel,
Do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
So Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said,
Neither has the Lord chosen this one.
Then Jesse made Shammah pass by. And he said,
Neither has the Lord chosen this one.
Thus Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse,
The Lord has not chosen these. Are all the young men here?
There remains yet the youngest. And there he is, keeping the sheep.
Send and bring him, for we will not sit down till he comes here.
So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, with bright eyes, and good-looking. And the Lord said,
Arise, anoint him, for this is the one.
Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel arose and went to Ramah. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him. And Saul's servants said to him,
Surely a distressing spirit from God is troubling you. Let our master now command your servants, who are before you, to seek out a man who is a skillful player on the harp. And it shall be that he will play it with his hand when the distressing spirit from God is upon you, and you shall be well.
Then Saul sent to Jesse,
Please let David stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight.
And so it was, whenever the Spirit from God was upon Saul, that David would take a harp and play it with his hand. Then Saul would become refreshed and well, and the distressing spirit would depart from him. Now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle, and were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Socoh and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel, and said to them,
Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us.
So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. and he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. Then David said to Saul,
"Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine."
You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. For you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth.
Your servant used to keep his father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord, who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine.
Go, and the Lord be with you.
Then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and he put them in a shepherd's bag, in a pouch which he had, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. So the Philistine came, and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking.
Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?
And the Philistine cursed David by his gods.
Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field.
You come to me with a sword, with a spear and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands.
So it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Then David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled.